Good morning, everyone. It's Friday, July 23rd, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Kim Mo-gyan. Before we begin, these are the stories we're following at the top of the hour. South Korea will extend the toughest virus restrictions in the Greater Seoul area for another 2 weeks from Monday amid the fourth wave of new COVID-19 outbreaks. The Tokyo Olympics is set to kick off tonight after a year-long postponement due to the coronavirus pandemic. However, the Games have been overshadowed by a resurgence of COVID-19 as well as numerous other controversies. And South Korean Vice Foreign Minister Choi Jong-kun is sitting down with his U.S. counterpart Wendy Sherman in Seoul this morning for their first bilateral strategic talks. Our top story this morning, the South Korean government has decided to keep the current level 4 distancing measures in the Greater Seoul area for 2 more weeks, pointing out that the extension is inevitable due to the surge in the number of infections across the nation. For details, we have our Kim Dami on the line for us. Dami, tell us more.
Mugan, the country's metropolitan area will be under level 4 distancing measures for 2 more weeks until August 8th. That also means the restriction on private gatherings of more than 2 people after 6 p.m. will remain in place. Current level 4 distancing measures are set to end on Sunday, but Friday's decision reflects the government's concern over the spread of the virus in the fourth wave.
To stop the virus that is affecting more and more parts of our daily lives, it is inevitable that we must limit private gatherings and movements.
Voicing concerns over active movements, especially during the summer vacation season, the health authorities have further advised citizens to spread out their vacation plans over the summer and strictly follow quarantine measures. Now, under the country's tightest virus curbs, all large-scale events and demonstrations will be banned except one-person demonstrations. Schools will continue to carry out online classes, and only family members and relatives are allowed to attend weddings and funerals. Multi-use facilities, including cafes, restaurants, and indoor gyms must close at 10 p.m. Friday's extension also follows the country's record high daily number of COVID-19 cases the previous day at over 1,800. And earlier in the morning, the country reported 1,630 new cases, recording a 4-digit daily figure for 17 straight days now. That's all I have. Back to you, Morgan.
Thank you for the updates, Tammy. Now, over in Japan, the 2020 Tokyo Olympics officially kick off tonight with an opening ceremony. However, the Games have been overshadowed by the resurgence of COVID-19 as well as numerous other controversies. Lee Seung-jae tells us more.
On Friday evening local time, Japan will welcome the world to the 2020 Tokyo Summer Olympics. Unfortunately, the lead-up to the Games has been mired in fears caused by the resurgence in COVID-19. According to Japan's NHK, the country reported 5,397 new cases as of early Thursday evening, with the host city itself reporting 1,979. The Tokyo figure is the highest number of cases in 6 months. Experts fear a 5th wave has arrived ahead of the Olympics. The 7-day average of new cases in Japan has more than doubled over the past 2 weeks. On top of that, just 22% of the population are fully vaccinated, leading experts to believe an explosive increase could happen over the coming weeks while the Olympics take place. A number of officials in charge of the opening ceremony have also been mired in controversies, including the director of the ceremony.
Kentaro Kobayashi, a member of the creative team, the production and direction team for the Olympic and closing ceremonies, has been found to have used lines in his own performances in the past that made fun of painful historical facts. In response, the Tokyo 2020 Organizing Committee has decided to dismiss Mr. Kobayashi today.
Kobayashi was dismissed after being accused of making a joke about the Holocaust in a comedy act in 1998. Kobayashi is just the latest high-profile firing in the scandal-marred buildup. On Monday, Kaigo Oyamada, the composer for the opening ceremony, resigned over allegations of bullying disabled children in the past. In March, Hiroshi Sasaki, the creative director for the Olympics, stepped down after suggesting a plus-size celebrity, Naomi Watanabe, play the role of an Olympic in the opening ceremony. Months before that, the then head of the organizing committee, Yoshiro Mori, stepped down for sexist comments, saying females tend to make meetings drag on because they talk too much. A resurgence of the virus, coupled with the scandals, mean questions remain on whether the Games will be as safe as organizers have promised they would be. 이승재, Arirang News.
The White House says it's deeply disappointed by China's decision to reject a WHO plan for a second probe into the origin of COVID-19. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said Thursday that Beijing's position is irresponsible and dangerous. The WHO earlier proposed a second probe, including audits across Wuhan, a plan backed by President Biden in addition to an investigation he himself put forward. But China's National Health Commission said Thursday that the WHO's plan disregards common sense and defies science, saying some data can't be disclosed due to privacy concerns. A new study shows a single dose of the Moderna vaccine is 72% effective in preventing infection with the Delta variant and 96% effective in preventing hospitalization and death. The Canadian study was cited Thursday by South Korean health authorities. Moderna will be one of the most widely used vaccines in South Korea from now on. People in their 50s are scheduled to get it starting Monday, and over 77% of those eligible have made reservations. A separate study reveals why the Delta variant is more transmissible. It says Delta causes 1,000 times more viral load than the non-variant. In addition, the infected become contagious after 4 days, 2 days faster than the non-variant. South Korean Vice Foreign Minister Choi Jong-kun is sitting down with his U.S. counterpart Wendy Sherman in Seoul this morning. It's their first bilateral vice ministerial meeting since the start of the Biden administration. The agenda includes a follow-up to the Moon-Biden summit in May, including vaccine partnership and the supply chains of key materials. They are also likely to discuss the Korean peace process. Eyes are on what message the U.S. will have regarding Beijing. Sherman will visit China this weekend, and a U.S. State Department spokesperson said Thursday that Washington's relationship with Beijing is competitive, but there are also areas that are cooperative, including North Korea issues. President Moon Jae-in met with Washington's #2 diplomat at the nation's top office. He called for efforts to resume dialogue with North Korea, while Wendy Sherman expressed hope the regime would respond to those efforts soon. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
President Moon Jae-in has asked U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman for her efforts to resume dialogue with North Korea. Sherman, who is in South Korea on an extended visit to Asia, paid a courtesy call to Moon at the Blue House on Thursday. The South Korean leader recalled a summit with U.S. President Joe Biden in May, where they reaffirmed the need for dialogue and diplomacy for complete denuclearization and lasting peace on the peninsula. Sherman said that the U.S. hopes for an early response from Pyongyang to its proposal for talks and wants continued coordination with Seoul on North Korea policy. Sherman added that she plans to discuss the matter in depth with Chinese officials during her visit to Beijing later in the week. She then noted the hit single Permission to Dance by South Korean boy band BTS, saying that the allies don't need permission from each other as they have worked together for a long time. Earlier in the day, the U.S. diplomat met with South Korea's Foreign Minister Chung Eui-yong and vowed close coordination across all levels to bring North Korea back to the negotiating table. Sherman said that the U.S. greatly values the alliance, calling it a linchpin of peace, stability, and prosperity in Northeast Asia and the Indo-Pacific. Chung called for close communication to implement follow-up measures regarding the outcomes of the recent South Korea-U.S. summit, ranging from economic to vaccine cooperation. During talks with Seoul's Unification Minister Lee In-young, Sherman expressed U.S. support for inter-Korean cooperation and dialogue, saying that the ministry's role is important for peace and stability on the peninsula. On Friday, the U.S. diplomat will hold bilateral strategic dialogue with her South Korean counterpart Choi Jong-kun before heading to Mongolia. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
UNESCO is calling on Japan to live up to its promise to honor the Korean victims of wartime forced labor, underscoring the fact that it did not provide sufficient information about the victims. Our Kim Hyo-san tells us more.
UNESCO has expressed strong regret over Japan's failure in managing its Industrial Revolution sites registered on the agency's World Heritage List. In a virtual meeting Thursday, the World Heritage Committee called for Tokyo to live up to its promise of fully honoring the victims of forced labor at information centers within such sites. The resolution adopted by the committee acknowledges Japan's failure to provide sufficient information about the Korean victims who were forced into hard labor in the 1940s. Such a decision comes after the committee asked Tokyo last month to address the insufficient information available about the notorious Hashima Island, also known as Battleship Island. Upon the 2015 World Heritage designation of 23 Meiji-era sites, the Japanese government vowed to remember the victims by establishing information centers. However, it only stressed the achievements made by Tokyo's Industrial Revolution without mentioning the suffering endured by the Korean victims. To this, Seoul's foreign ministry said it will closely monitor further developments, vowing to cooperate with related global agencies to fully implement the resolution. Kim Hyo-san, Arirang News.
Prosecutors in Hungary have opened a probe into suspected unlawful surveillance after multiple complaints were filed in the wake of allegations of misuse of spyware known as Pegasus. The Budapest Regional Investigation Prosecutor's Office says the investigation would examine the suspicion of gathering unauthorized secret information. An investigation published Sunday by a coalition of media organizations claimed the spyware was used by governments in several countries to infiltrate the smartphones of thousands of people. French President Emmanuel Macron has changed his cell phone number in light of the investigation. The Taliban claims it now controls 90% of Afghanistan's borders after sweeping offensives following the withdrawal of foreign forces. A Taliban spokesman was quoted as saying the group has seized Afghanistan's borders with Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Iran. Following the withdrawal of U.S. and NATO troops, the Taliban now controls over half of Afghanistan's roughly 400 districts. The news comes a day after the Afghan government and the Taliban reportedly agreed to expedite peace talks. Companies around the world eagerly compete to become official Olympic sponsors. But this year, it's a little different, mainly due to the controversial way the event is being held. Some opt for ways to promote products instead. Our Kim Sang-min zooms in on this trend.
It is against basic ethics to hold such an event when the world is suffering so much. I think it's wrong to hold the Olympics during this period.
This is still a general sentiment in Japan about the upcoming Olympics, with some polls showing around 70% of the total population wanting them to be cancelled. Such opposition has put sponsors in a difficult spot with how they're going to position themselves at a pandemic-tainted games.
There is a mixed public sentiment towards the games at this moment or even past year towards the games. So in that respect, there must be a decision by each company in terms of how they should be able to disseminate, how they should be able to convey their messages.
Many have chosen to distance themselves. That includes Toyota, a leading worldwide sponsor, which has decided not to air any Olympics-related TV commercials in Japan, and its president will not be attending the opening ceremony. The same decision was made by the country's three biggest business associations, choosing not to send their leaders to Friday's opening ceremony. Airbnb, also a worldwide sponsor of the Olympics, made it clear during an interview with U.S. news outlet Axios that the partnership was designed specifically to support the individual Olympic and Paralympic athletes and not any particular city or games. However, some are taking a different path, swiftly adjusting their marketing strategies instead of completely pulling out. Samsung Electronics, the only Korean company among the top 15 sponsors of the Games, has come up with a virtual media center where people can get a sneak peek of their Galaxy products safely at home. Another way Samsung expanded its marketing was to form Team Galaxy, made up of 11 South Korean athletes, with some wearing the new Galaxy Watch 4. The top sponsors of the Olympics have reportedly paid around $500 million for multi-year rights for marketing and exclusive deals with the International Olympic Committee. And about half of the total budget for the Tokyo's Olympic and Paralympic Games, which is around $3 billion, came from the local sponsorships. Kim Sung-min, Arirang News.
South Korea on Thursday endured its hottest day of the season. The daytime high in Seoul hit 38 degrees Celsius, with other regions also getting a baking. Weather experts largely attribute the searing heat to what is known as a heat dome. Lee Kyung-un reports.
South Korea is trapped under a so-called heat dome. There's hot and humid air near the ground. That hot air would usually rise, but it is blocked by hot, dry air in the upper atmosphere. That trapped air near the ground gets compressed and gets even hotter. This phenomenon is largely blamed for the heat wave that the country has seen over the past days.
But the worst came on Thursday, on the day of Taeseo, which literally means big heat in Korean. It is the hottest day of the season so far, with temperatures hovering around 36 degrees Celsius.
Other parts of the country saw the mercury going up as high as 38 degrees.
My legs feel like they're literally being cooked, and I feel my head steaming. I'm trying to cool down with this parasol.
I put layers of sunscreen on my face and arms, and I took out my sunglasses because I can barely open my eyes.
The night isn't much cooler either. Even after the sun set last night, temperatures didn't drop below 25 degrees in most parts, with Seoul's even hovering around 27 degrees. This is an apartment complex in Seoul captured by a heat camera at 8 p.m. The hottest areas are those that are red. The red circles represent the air conditioners that are in full operation, pumping out the heat. Many households seem to have kept their air conditioners running throughout the day. The country's maximum power consumption reached 89.9 gigawatts as of 5 p.m. Wednesday, the highest of the season so far. That's caused some parts of the capital region to see power outages, including one at an apartment complex in Incheon that lasted for 6 hours. But the power consumption is expected to be even higher on Thursday. Jongun, Arirang News.
Welcome. It's time for The World Now, bringing you some of the most interesting news from around the globe. I'm Ji-young. Amid scorching heat in the city, the effects of global warming have materialized in London through an ice racing car. A life-size ice replica of an Invasion Virgin racing Formula E car on display was left melting very fast. The melting point event was organized to raise awareness of climate change by exposing an ice sculpture to London's heat for a day.
But what we've done is put 594 gallons worth of ice in the form of one of our beautiful Envision Virgin racing cars. And we've asked the public to take a guess as how fast and how much of it will melt in a 24-hour period of time.
The company said for every guess, it'll donate $1 to the Arctic Ice Project, a non-profit organization that takes action against climate change and aims to restore ice in the Arctic. Low birth rates are a serious problem for many countries around the globe, and Iran's government, also worried about the country's rising age of marriage and falling birth rate, has come up with a creative solution, a dating app. Young Iranians wishing to find love now have a state-approved option called Haram, which means companion in Farsi. Although there are concerns about this app, including displaying the height and weight of female users, one local resident said it would be a good thing for this app to find its place in the market.
Young people will likely stop using foreign applications such as Tinder, and if they do, they will have to use VPNs.
Haddam is so far the only legal matchmaking app in Iran, and it requires users to take a psychology test and gives advice for young singles to find their marriage partner. Iranian media reports say Iran's fertility rate stands at about 1.7 children per woman and has dropped by some 25% over the past 4 years. It's a rare scene captured for the first time in 5 years. Shy and elusive by nature, a snow leopard, often called ghosts of the mountains, was spotted in its natural habitat, roaming around the terrain and sniffing the camera. The video footage was released by the Russian branch of the Worldwide Fund for Nature and came from automatic cameras installed in remote mountains in eastern Kazakhstan. The animals inhabit high alpine areas. Estimates by WWF Asia say only about 100 snow leopards remain in Kazakhstan due to poaching and overgrazing.
Good morning. Today looks to be as hot as yesterday. Heat wave warnings have been expanded to more regions now, including Daegu and parts of Gyeongsang-do provinces. So it comes as no surprise that people seeking medical treatment due to the heat has doubled compared to the same time last year. Blazing summer sun will shine down nationwide, while eastern or western rather Gangwon-do province could see sporadic rain during the day today. Chuncheon meanwhile could go up to 37 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Speaking of which, highs in Seoul can also rise up to 37 degrees tomorrow, and intense heat could stay through next week. However, next week's forecast could be adjusted depending on the indirect effect of Typhoon Infa. The sixth tropical storm this year is expected to make landfall in eastern China this weekend, and the typhoon could bring even more hot, moist air to the Korean peninsula, or it could bring rain to give us some slight relief from the heat. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that will do it for us at this hour on Arirang News. We'll be back at noon Korea time, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching and goodbye.